Yeah, it's interesting. I can see who's muted on by their names.
So presently I'm not muted. And so Mayor, Brian, do you want us to actually raise our hand? Is that best or do that?
Yeah, I think you can do either one as long as you got video. So I don't have Glenise or Jim with video. So they would have to hit the raise hand, but for the rest of you guys, if you want to, just raise your hands. If you just hold it up there, that's good enough too. And I'll keep checking on the side for anybody that's not on video to see if they need to be called or want to be called on.
Very good, thank you.
I don't see Councilmember Navarro on here yet.
Oh,
Oh, there he goes.
Hey, Jamie, can you hear me?
yeah.
Hear you, Jim.
Yeah. How do I get my smiling little face in the participants?
If you tap on your screen and it comes down and that bar comes down, it's mute and stop video.
Start video?
Yep. There you go.
Ta-da.
Go back. Go back.
There you are.
Go Bears.
Hey, Tim.
The Bears. There we go.
Yeah, I was just telling these guys, Tim, if you want to be called upon, just now that I got you guys on video, just hold your hand up, okay? And I'll be able to catch you. I'll kind of scan here as we go along.
Tim, you're muted.
Now you can hear me. I
Yeah,
said, Jim, what's that funny hat you're wearing?
The Bears.
Oh.
Can you hear me? Can you
I
hear me?
can.
Okay.
I'm off mute. I'm glad Robert told me I was on mute.
don't forget to take it off when we do the pledge, Jim.
Are you in your Faraday cage, Jim?
Barely.
Yeah,
I
I got the boys out there and I locked the door so that I don't get interrupted.
Oh man, this house is tough to work out of.
It is. I got my packet right here.
So Jim must not want to be called on since he's wearing his Bears hat, huh?
Well, it's either that or my little bald head shining through.
Is there a game this Sunday?
I'm hoping, but I doubt it.
Are you ready,
Are we
Jim?
waiting for anybody else, Brian?
Just a minute, Scott. What the heck's behind you, man?
I got a pillow.
Oh,
No, Scott.
it looks like one of your works of art there, Scott. We
'Cause I
ready?
only see Robert, Henry, the mayor, and Bob.
Yeah, Glenise is on.
And I got Terry. I got Terry and Jamie and Paul.
You got me?
There's somebody else. Yeah, I got you. Now I got Scott and Terry and Glenise and the host computer. I don't know what
You
you're
can
supposed
slide it
to
to
do.
the left or right, Tim, and there's.
Yes, if you slide it, then can you make it into 12s? Henry?
I don't, Jamie, can you make it into 12? So all I have is 9.
I only have 9. Yeah, okay.
Oh,
So to find Glenise, we have to slide, huh?
Yeah, and Scott.
And Glenise is still,
I have 12 on my screen. I hit the little thing on the top right. It gives a whole bunch of options.
Yeah, but you're on the computer. Everyone else is on iPads.
Oh, okay.
quit cheating, Robert. All right.
yeah, we ready to go, Jamie?
I'm ready.
All right. Seeing it's 6:01, I'd like to call the April 1st, 2020 regular meeting of the Kenai City Council to order. If you're able, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America,
To the republic.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Liberty and justice for all. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel,
Here.
Councilmember Peterkin,
Here,
Councilmember Glendenning,
Here,
Councilmember Petty,
Here,
Vice Mayor Malloy,
Here,
Councilmember Navar,
Here,
Councilmember Naxtet,
Here,
Mayor Gabriel, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next up, we have agenda approval. I'm not aware of any laydowns we have this evening. Vice Mayor Malloy.
thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Move to approve the agenda, request unanimous consent.
second,
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Next up, we have the consent agenda. Councilmember Naxted.
I move to approve the consent agenda, request unanimous consent.
second,
Is there anybody from the council that would like to make an amendment to the consent agenda at this time? Denise?
no,
Seeing none, we'll have the clerk please read into the record. You're muted, Jamie.
Thanks, sorry. On the consent agenda tonight, we have approval of bills to be ratified brought forth by the administration, approval of purchase orders over $15,000 brought forth by the administration, approval of non-objection to the renewal of liquor licenses for George's Nightclub, Uptown Motel, Backdoor Lounge, Uptown Motel Louis, and Kenai Elks Lodge number 2425 brought forth by the city clerk. And we have introduction of ordinance number 3116-2020, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the airport special revenue and airport improvements capital project funds, and authorizing the professional services agreement for the design of the airport operations sand storage facility project brought forth by the administration, and that public hearing would be held April 15th. And that is your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I don't believe we have anybody wishing to speak to the consent agenda, and seeing none. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. That brings us to item B. We have no scheduled public comments. I don't believe we have any unscheduled public comments at this time. Next, we have item D1, public hearing, ordinance number 3113-2020, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the Terminal Improvements Capital Fund and authorizing an increase to the design agreement with Wentz Corthell Bryson. This is brought forward by the administration. Councilmember Naxted.
I move to enact ordinance 3113-2020.
Second,
Thank you. Madam Clerk, I can't tell if anybody's online that would be like to speak. Are you aware of anybody that's online this time? You're muted. Jamie, you're muted.
It's just us.
Okay, very good. Then I'll move on then. Since there's no one online to speak to this, I'll bring it to council. Comments from council, deliberation.
Yeah.
Councilmember Naxted.
Just I should have written them down. I had two questions I had for Paul actually earlier. One had to do with there was a date. It looked like they were extending the date till yesterday, even though we're going to be appropriating some funds for ongoing work. Just had a question about that. And the second question of the two was, this money goes to Wentz Corthell, but I presume that they got some consultants, so it's really a lot of it's passed through, I'm presuming, to mechanical or electrical. I was wondering if Paul could talk to those two questions.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Naxted. So the first question about the date of April 1st, or actually March 31st. It is actually, it was intended that it would end on March 31st. The reality is, because of the COVID-19 issue, we've now got a project that is currently on hold. There's a little bit of project left. And actually, this portion of construction administration services actually extends 60 days beyond substantial completion. And substantial completion, even though there is a few items still have to do, was actually granted last week to Blazy Construction. So this actually will extend for 60 days beyond substantial completion. So 60 days from last week.
Thank you. Did you have another question, Councilmember Naxton?
Yeah, I kind of asked it, but it was the extension and just that there are a number of other consultants. I just kind of for the record, it looks like Winscorthell is getting all the money and they are getting the money, but there's other consultants behind them. Is there not from other places?
Mr. Ostrander.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Next. Yes, apologize for not answering your second question. I got lost in the first one.
Sorry.
Yeah, so the additional amount for construction administration services does not all go to Winscorthell. You know, there's architectural services involved there as well. You know, this one, the 117,000 is primarily Winscorthell and Kluge and Associates. So the architectural firm and the engineering firm is the majority of this additional extension.
Okay.
Any other deliberation comments?
Yes, this is Glenise. I raised my hand.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes, I would like to ask Mr. Ostrander, is there provisions available in the event that our 60 days passes that we can extend that 60 days due to the COVID-19?
Mr. Ostrander.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Petty. This is so fluid right now with the COVID-19. If it does, in fact, take longer than 60 days to get the initial work done, we'll have to work with the consultants to do that. You know, right now there's no work going on, so they're actually not performing any part of this contract. So if we do get to the point where we need to extend beyond that 60 days, we will work with the consultant and amend that appropriately. Again, things are so fluid right now. I don't know if that's going to be necessary, but we'll certainly be able to work with the consultant if that occurs.
Thank you.
Councilmember Peterkin.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Paul, if you wouldn't mind just giving me a quick rundown of what this is for, like what they're doing. Just not too long, but a quick one.
Mr. Ostrander.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Peterkin. So this design contract is actually the design contract that was awarded back in 2017, September of 17, to design the rehabilitation project. There were several phases of that. The first one was phase one of this design, which was an appropriation amount of almost $160,000. Then there's an amendment 2 that actually completed the design. So the first phase of it was more or less conceptual. The second portion of it completed the design portion of it. So that was amendment number 2, or excuse me, amendment 1. And then amendment 2 was added on to include construction administration services during the construction of the project. And then that takes us to today, which, because the contract was extended to March 30th, because of the delays that we had due to last year's fire, and also because of a lot of the additional work that was needed with asbestos abatement. This actually extends that construction administration services to the end of the contract, or like I said, 60 days after the contract end. In addition, it also adds a small amount for furniture design, which the original design didn't include the furniture design. So that's a part of this. And then also, as I've discussed with council several times in the last month or so, we're looking at potentially including the boiler replacement in this project, which wasn't originally anticipated. So this includes also a boiler design that if we think that after we get that design done and get a cost estimate for that, if we think we can do that under this contract, that will also be added as well.
Thank you.
So would there be money to purchase the furniture as designed after the design is done, Mr. Ostrander?
Yes, Mayor Gable, that's the intent.
Okay, very good. Any other comments, deliberation? Councilmember Glendinning.
Yes, I just noticed from the note from Scott Curtin that the management agreement is around 10%, which I think is amazing in view of all the adjustments we've had to make along the way. So kudos to Scott Curtin and Paul and the crew, and hopefully we can get this thing wrapped up. Appreciate the attention to detail.
Any other comments, discussion from council? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterkin,
Yes.
Councilmember Glendinning,
Yes,
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Malloy,
Yes.
Councilmember Navar,
Yes.
Councilmember Nextet,
Yes,
motion passes.
Thank you. Council, we're now on item D2, resolution number 2020-17, authorizing the use of funds remaining after completion of the Kenai Senior Center solarium, roof repair, dining room, and administrative office carpet replacement projects for a new project to create an alternate entrance into the center's lab brought forward by administration. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Navar.
I move for the approval of resolution number 2020-17 and request unanimous consent.
second.
I do not believe we have anybody that's online to speak to this. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Councilmember Glendinning.
No objection. No
Okay.
objection.
Oh, your box lit up there. Okay, seeing no objection, resolution number 2020-17 is adopted. So that brings us to discussion, city response to COVID-19. And with that, I'll turn it over to to Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I know at the last council meeting, council had suggested that we have a discussion item on the agenda to discuss the city's response to COVID-19. So I wanted to make sure that was on there. I'll try to summarize rather quickly what we've been doing over the last 14, 17 days, whatever it's been. It's been kind of a whirlwind, but since the 18th of March, I believe, we've had a standing incident management team meeting every day, Monday through Friday at 9:30. That incident management team has really helped guide us through a lot of the policy decisions that we've had to make. That team is made up of Tony Pryor, the fire chief, Dave Ross, police chief, Jamie Hines, Christine Cunningham, Terry Eubank, Stormy Brown, HR director, and Scott Bloom. So starting on March 16th, we did issue 2 weeks of temporary leave for all employees in anticipation of some of them having to be gone because of COVID, and also encouraging folks that if they needed to stay home if they were sick. We really wanted to make sure that we weren't having folks that were sick coming into work. And then on the 18th, we actually instituted post-travel restrictions for all city employees. So if they were traveling back into the state from out of state, that they would have to quarantine themselves for 14 days before they came back to work. On the 23rd, we started tracking overtime in response to COVID-19. We've been trying to document as well as we can all of our expenses associated with COVID-19. There's a lot of federal programs, a lot of federal funding out there right now, and it's really unclear on what is going to be eligible for reimbursables. So trying to capture as much as we can, all of the efforts of the city during this time, not only with tracking overtime, but tracking any of our additional expenditures or any costs associated with this response. We've been trying to keep track of those. On the 24th, we actually sent out a memo to all employees that recommended how they should get tested in case they started coming down with COVID-19 like symptoms. Then on the 28th, due to the governor's mandate 011, all positions that do not support critical operation of the city were told not to report to work. That was 32 city employees who, as of Monday of this week, were told not to report to work, and they've been staying home. Of those 32 employees, many of them have now been approved for telework of some kind. Most of the employees is partial telework. In a lot of cases, it was really difficult to come up with a telework structure that allowed them to work the full 40 hours a week, but we did the best we could to try to identify repetitive tasks and also come up with specific projects that they could provide some meaningful productivity while they're away from the office teleworking and not utilize all the leave that's been provided them. We did this week send out an explanation of all the different leave types that the employees is available to employees now. You've received my executive order number 3 today by email. It actually extended that temporary leave to 2 more weeks, which was a federal mandate.
I can't hear.
You can't hear, Bob?
Yeah, Paul's, it cut out. I got a message that the internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, I had that pop up on my screen just a minute ago and then it went away shortly.
Can you hear me now, Bob?
Yeah. I only missed like maybe 10 seconds. Thank you.
All right. I was just saying that you should have received executive order number 3 today by email, which was an executive order that extended the leave for employees to really what is a total of 4 weeks of leave. The second 2 weeks is actually under a federal mandate, started today, where all employers under 500 employees and also local governments are mandated to provide 2 weeks of sick leave. So this executive order number 3 satisfies that federal requirement, and as a result ends up providing 4 weeks of leave for all employees. With that, I will add, we're going right now with the hope and I think the expectation that April is going to be the really difficult month, not only for the city and city employees, but I think for the state and probably the nation. They're hopeful that things will at least start returning to normal, or at least have signs of things returning to normal in May. If we extend well beyond May, there's going to be some difficult decisions to make as far as how we're going to handle employees and whether or not additional leave would be allowed. So we haven't broached that subject yet. At least we haven't decided specifically how we want to approach that. But we're hopeful that if we have these 4 weeks in place now, that will get most folks through April, and then in May we can start getting folks returning back to their normal duties. So with that, if there's questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions of the state manager, Councilmember Navarre?
Thanks. Paul, on the borough and other cities working together, what are we doing? Like if we do get hit hard, are they making any plans for the homeless and where to put them? Is there any cooperation between the cities? Did the city managers meet at least to talk about a unified front, that we don't have differing support, or we just going off of what the governor does and nothing locally?
Mr. Ostrander.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Navarre. I speak with Stephanie Queen almost daily. Probably for the last 2 weeks, I've spoken to her every day. We've had 4 or 5 separate all city manager on the peninsula meetings, teleconferences. We've also had 2 or 3 statewide city manager conferences. But as far as cooperation between the municipalities on the peninsula, certainly Soldotna and Kenai are very closely aligned in the actions that we've taken. And before I make any decisions or Stephanie makes any decisions, we always check in with each other to make sure that we're in concert. As far as cooperation, actually, there was a letter that Stephanie and I drafted last Friday that was intended to be signed by Mayor Gabriel and the other mayors of the cities and Mayor Charlie Pierce that talked about how we were requesting that the governor take a leadership role and listen to the medical health professionals in the state and make decisions based on the advice he was getting from the medical professionals. I think that generally the intent was what was accomplished through mandate 11 and 12 on Friday. So once the governor actually passed or provided those two mandates, there wasn't a need for that letter to be completed. But that was one specific example of a way that we were trying to collaborate, not only between Kenai and Solano, but between all the municipalities and the borough as a whole.
Is someone clicking their pen? Sounds like it. Anyway, yeah, and just to follow up with that part that Paula just talked about, as far as a unified letter from the peninsula governments, you know, I think that's something that we sort of laid the groundwork moving forward, because with the different types of authorities we have on the peninsula for the borough government versus local governments, municipal governments, and what they're, I want to make sure, I think that whatever we do is it would be better coming down from the state level, because we can't do anything less restrictive than the state would do anyway. So that way we don't have a hodgepodge of different restrictions like you might see in some states in the lower 48. So I think what they did, like in California, where they did a statewide mandate, works a lot. Folks relying on local governments to do their own mandates. So with that, is there any Councilmember Navarro?
Just a follow up. So my question with the homeless, I know Anchorage opened up the Sullivan Arena, you know, with the fact that people don't want to bring anybody into their homes, even because of the potential. Are the police running into that? I mean, are they, I know it was exempt. I think on one of the governor's incentive, it says homeless is exempt, but Anchorage did something so the police would know, I mean, so they can do something. I'm just wondering if we as a borough or cities, if the directive is to totally tighten real tight, you know, where nobody can be on the street, or you have a curfew directed by the governor. How do we enforce that if we haven't made any plans for some of the less fortunate of our community, and how do we address that? And do we have a game plan? I mean, if we talk to the school district of using this building or the gym at here or our rec center that has showers and things like that. But again, I don't know how bad it could get or what, but those are just some of the things I know Anchorage took some action on. And I'm just wondering if we've made any plans at all.
Mr. Ostrander.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Navarre. We haven't made any plans specific to the homeless. Certainly if the governor came down with a more restricted mandate that would require curfews, you know, we may look at something like that. You know, under the current mandates, you know, nothing has really changed for the homeless population at this point. And, you know, I haven't talked to Chief Ross about that specifically, but I haven't heard any issues with the homeless since the mandate has gone into place.
Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. First, I appreciate the update on the executive orders being copied with that. That's worked really well. I'd also like to see us continue to have this discussion item on our agenda as we need, you know, going forward. But a kind of a follow-up question, because I've received some questions about events that are kind of in the future and they're outside of the current disaster declaration time period, such as, you know, the July 4 parade and the dipnet fishery. And so I was wondering, Mr. Ostrander, if you've, you know, if a if that's already on the state's agenda as far as the dip net fishery, as far as discussion is concerned, or is that still far enough down the road that you haven't heard anything, any discussion about that?
Mr. Ostrander?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Vice Mayor Malloy. I actually spoke with Colton Lipka of Fish and Game either earlier this week or late last week, and they're already beginning to look at some of these fisheries that are the most intensive, so that bring people the closest together, such as the Russian River fishery, the personal use fishery on the Kenai and the Kasilof. Also, even potentially, they brought up the folks that are flipping for reds on the Kenai River itself. They've got some concerns about those. It's still a ways out for them to make any decisions, but we did talk about the personal use fishery specifically, and any potential impacts it would have on that. I talked to Mr. Bloom about our ability to restrict access to the beaches if it became necessary for public health and safety. I do think we have some ability to do that. We would certainly be working in concert with the state. I told Colton that I would hope that if we got to that point where we were still in under a social distancing mandate, that the state would simply close those fisheries that would result in congregations greater than what's allowed by the mandate.
Vice Mayor Malloy?
Just to follow up. So I appreciate that, and thank you for the information and explanation. I kind of have a follow-up question, maybe for the finance director, through you. And I appreciate the the email that we got about a little bit of delay in the budget process, and I totally understand that. And I know that there may be some kind of uncertainty, and I guess I'm sort of wondering about that. Probably sales tax is going to be up for in some areas like supplies, groceries and stuff like that, and then down in other areas, maybe such as services and things like that. And I don't know if that's, how I know it's always an estimation thing, but it is, how do you see that affecting the validity of the numbers that we're going to be seeing? Thank you.
Mr. Eubank?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Malloy, I spent most of today actually pouring through sales tax numbers, looking back at some historic numbers as far as by different categories of sales, and honestly just putting my crystal ball together and applying some foreseen or potential reductions in sales by different categories. Right now I see for the quarter that just ended yesterday, our retail sales likely to be up because of the run on grocery stores and things like that we saw in March there. But I see, bars and restaurants and hotels revenues being down. So I kind of went through that process today. I sat down with the city manager and we looked at some of those projections. I'm not going to say Paul agreed with me, but I think what he did feel was that all of my assumptions were reasonable. And what it looks like right now, I would project, and we were up prior to this event, I would project for FY20, that's this fiscal year, that we will likely come in about $400,000 under what I originally projected for sales tax. And in comparison for where I was a month ago projecting for FY21 sales tax, I believe we're going to come in about $700,000 short of that. And I will stipulate that, that those kind of estimates are kind of predicated on, a lot of the social distancing and things kind of being lifted by, mid-May, end of May. The longer that drags on, I think the more impact we're going to see on sales tax. and other revenues, but that's kind of the crystal balling we're doing right now and re-examining the budget and priorities and other things, and that's why, you know, I appreciate you guys' understanding, but that's why we decided to pull back on putting out that budget draft, because everything's changed in the last 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Do you see much more drastic change in the next 2 weeks, Terry?
You know, the impact I'm, you know, personally hoping to see is I would expect gas prices at some point to drop, since oil's at an 18-year low. I don't watch it on a daily basis, but from all the anecdotal and comments I've gotten from everybody else, it really hasn't dropped. And gas stations are a big taxpayer for sales tax collector for us. You know, it's a high volume and a lot of taxable sales. So I think that could come in over the next a little bit and start seeing a little bit more impact. But and I think the sales at the grocery stores and the run on the grocery stores is kind of moderated. I don't think you're seeing that same level anymore. There was a pretty good push there for a while, but I think that's kind of moderating a little bit too, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Naxton.
Yeah, just, I was wondering if, you know, you proposed to delay getting the budget documents together. If you think that maybe you might need a little more time, or do you think that that's a good time for a preliminary and then it could change quite a bit? What do you want to do?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Naxted. You know, I think I'm just working with the city manager. I think at some point we're going to have to put together a budget and work through the process to meet our legal responsibility to pass a budget. And I think that we're going to have some trust and faith with you and, you know, with us and council to work through next fiscal year where, you know, I talked with Paul today. We have two options. We can present a bare bones, cut a whole bunch of stuff out budget, and then as we start to recover from this, or if we recover quicker than we think, we could come back by supplemental appropriations and put these things in. I see that as a little bit cumbersome, but that's certainly within council's purview if we wanted to do that. Or another option is we put our best guess forward right now and enter the remainder of this year and the new fiscal year with quite a bit of fiscal constraint and scrutiny over all spending, you know, as we move forward, but still have the flexibility as things start to recover to start to spend some of the monies where we need to them and provide the services that we should. So I think that was Paul was going to have a discussion with council here in a little bit, but it kind of these questions kind of pushed it to the forefront. But so I think it's up to council how we want to proceed, but that's how I view a couple different ways we could.
Thank you. Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes, thank you. Just two things is one is I really appreciate the comment from administration regarding our budget and future projection of revenues and our obligations, not only to present a budget, but to our citizens and the programs we have. And I'll stand by and eagerly listen to what's being presented. But if I'll only just roll back the discussion a little bit to where we had talked about non-essential folks, and maybe someone that had a CDL license could kind of fold into the program, or someone maybe could be cross-trained. Have we looked at any more of those issues so we could maybe have a more flexible workforce? And then along with, say again?
No,
anyway, that's
going.
my question.
Councilman or Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Glendenning. We haven't explored a lot of that. In addition, you know, like I said, we've looked at cross-training some folks in animal control. That's one of the things we've looked at. There's also the possibility we know we have folks that are in the Parks and Rec department that are in that category that is not reporting to work right now that could provide some support for streets. So we have identified folks within the city that are in that group that's not reporting to work that could support services. But fortunately, so far, everyone's maintaining their health, and we haven't had to replace any of those folks with people that have those qualifications.
Councilmember Navarre.
Thank you. To Terry through Paul, if I could, the state budget has been passed. Did that come in a little higher than you put in projected budgets, or a little lower, or about the same? Or don't you know yet?
Mr. Eubank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Navarre. I be honest with you, I have not studied the state budget a whole lot. I did ask City Manager Ostrander today when we were talking about revenue sharing, and he thought that it was forward funded and came in at what the original projections were, which is about, I think, $70,000, which is about $100,000 decrease over last year for us. But in great detail, no, I have not had time to study the state budget that was passed.
Any other discussion on Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. As Terry said, I was planning on having a discussion item on the budget, but you guys stole some of my thunder. But there is a couple things I did want to add on to what Terry talked about. You know, his projections when he presented them to me today, I didn't frankly want to accept that they're reality, but you know, like he said, I think that his assumptions that he used and the amount of detail, as deep as he went into it, I'm confident that it's the best guess that we have out there. It's still exactly that, though. It's a guess, and it could change. It could become much worse. I'm always an optimist. I'm hoping that it's going to be much better, but I will tell you that in looking at 2021, well, let me back up. In 2020, we're going to be $400,000 short, according to Terry's projections, which means we are going to utilize more fund balance this year than what we had projected when council passed this budget. We will do everything we can to minimize that over the course of the next 4 months, but we are going to pull more from the fund balance this year than what we projected. Going into 21, as Terry said, as we prepared this budget, the revenue estimate he had for sales tax was we were going to receive 7.8. Can you not hear, Mr. Malloy?
Yeah, Bob, can you hear? Bob, can you hear?
Can you hear, Bob?
Okay, you're back.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, if I cut out, just raise your hand and I'll notice.
I kind of went.
Yeah, that's what got my attention too. Okay.
All right. So as Terry said, we were projecting $7.8 million in sales tax revenue. After his adjustments today, that's just over 7 million. That's a loss of almost $800,000. So what I directed today, you know, we had the work session on the capital improvement plan. First time we put together a capital improvement plan, a 5-year plan. I was really excited about the fact that we'd identified what we needed to do. Based on these projections, we've just thrown that plan out the window and moved it to next year. We're ignoring the plan for this year. All the projects that we have, with the exception of very few of them, are going to be deferred to next year. So rather than a 2021 to 2026 plan, this is now turned into a 2022 to 2027 plan. So that was $1.1 million that we were planning on putting in the budget. And I had talked to council about the need potentially to raise taxes to pay for that deferred maintenance. In this environment, I don't think that raising taxes, there's any appetite for that. I don't think the community would accept it, and I don't think it's healthy for the community to do that at this time either. So I have removed almost all of that capital out of there. And even with removing essentially what is $1 million of capital funding out of the budget, we're still projecting a deficit spend next year of $650,000. One of the things that I did make a priority was maintaining the services to the residents at the level that they are now. And that includes continuing to employ the folks that we have in the past. So not eliminating any positions. However, I think going forward from this point and for the foreseeable future, I am going to have to institute an actual hiring freeze at the city. Otherwise, I'm concerned about the amount of money that we're going to be spending out of the fund balance. And when we do finally recover and pull out of this thing, our fund balance could be depleted to the point that being able to pay for those capital projects, even with a tax increase, isn't going to be possible. So we're going to have to take some significant, make some significant changes compared to what we were going to do 1 month ago. But we're prepared to do those and weather this storm and come out on the other end. And I think we'll be stronger for it.
Any other, Councilmember Petty?
Yes. What action needs to be done in order to implement that hiring freeze? Mr. Ostrander, please.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Petty. I just have to put a hiring freeze in place where we don't actively recruit. All recruitments require my approval, and I just will not approve those recruitments. Now, there's going to have to be on a case-by-case basis because there are some positions within the city. For example, if we had a frontline firefighter that retired or moved to another position, that's a position that I would have to replace to maintain that service. But the majority of positions, at least on a temporary basis, can be frozen. And that's what this would be. This would be a temporary hiring freeze. It's not that these positions would be eliminated. It would just that we wouldn't recruit and wouldn't hire them until we see the light on the other side of this and feel comfortable that as a city that we can fund those positions.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. So we're still on the discussion city response to COVID-19. Any other further comments or discussion regarding this topic? Seeing none, we'll move to commission committee reports. Council on Aging.
The next Council on Aging meeting is May the 9th. The meeting in the current time frame has been canceled.
Very good. Airport Commission.
Yes, I believe the next airport commission meeting is May the 14th. I did want to just let council know the airport commission at their last meeting did have a discussion, just so council's aware of it. I did bring it to the city manager's attention, but there's an issue on the float plane basin gas pump on a card reader that doesn't take some kind of cards from the CAP and from the Fish and Game and those people. If people are flying, they have to go to Homer or Anchorage to be able to, or they have to use their personal card and get reimbursed by that entity. But other float plane areas have the ability to read the card. It amounts to, and Paul's going to get with us and brief us on the cost and that, but essentially it might be $3 on $100 of gasoline or something that for those users. And overall, I think we'd still be ahead. But he's going to get with the airport manager and get back to us on any recommendation. The commission's for fixing it and allowing the CAP and Fish and Game and others to use that. I think it's a Trix card or whatever. I don't know what they call it. But anyway, I just wanted council to be briefed on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Harbor Commission.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Our next meeting will be May 11th unless this is still going on and will likely go to the next month. One thing, since Tim mentioned the card reader, it made me think about there is some interest in our dock. Mr. Curtin put it out for bid, but apparently a couple of people are interested. and I believe he's gonna put it out for rebid. And then we are also working on potentially getting fuel at the city dock, because all of the the fish,
Private.
yeah, the fish canneries are all interested in us fueling them. So we're looking into that. Scott's looking into all of that, and I know Paul is as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Commission.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. The next meeting is May 7th.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning Commission.
Planning and zoning, I believe, has a meeting scheduled for April 8th, next Wednesday.
Thank you. Beautification Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. April was canceled and our next meeting will be sometimes in May. We'll see if that comes to fruition. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mini Grant Steering Committee, there's no report.
Hey, real quick,
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask Henry or the clerk, is planning and zoning gonna be on Zoom like us?
Oh, good question. Ms. Hines.
Yes, all the meetings that we have to have from this point forward will be conducted just like this. We will request the public to notify me if they wish to testify on anything, and then we will provide them. Well, the public is provided anyway with the Zoom links. They're welcome to call in by telephone or connect in through Wi-Fi, and we'll call on them when it's time for them to testify, and mute them then when they're done, and we'll be throwing it up on YouTube just like this.
Thank you. Mr. Peterkin.
Go ahead.
Yeah, can we limit Jim Clendening's Zoom time for the month, please?
Maybe we should put that on a discussion item on the next agenda. Councilmember Navarre.
Thanks. No, I was gonna make somewhat of the same joke since it's April 1st. But on a serious note, and why we have Scott Bloom with us also, and Jamie, is there an issue if all of us listened in on planning and zoning? Is there some notice we should have to give? I mean, Henry's the liaison to the commission, but is there a rule that we need to be concerned about?
Ms. Hines.
I would say you're also allowed to watch on YouTube, so I would hope that not all of you join in on the Zoom call, but that you can watch it from YouTube as well.
Well, with that said, if I could, Mayor, with that said, normally you have to send us a password anyway, wouldn't you, to get on, to be part of the meeting Zoom?
It's published on the agenda.
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
But, you know, obviously you can observe on YouTube, correct? Just like any other meeting that you could log on to and watch live. Is that correct, Ms. Hines?
That's correct.
Yeah, so. With that, I'll move on to report of the mayor. You know, I was hoping to report that, you know, we had a great time at the pie auction and all sorts of other good stuff, but, you know, obviously things have been canceled left and right here. Moving forward, this is, you know, obviously unique and, you know, probably the first time in the city of Kenai that we've all conducted a meeting from somewhere other than the same room, individually separated. So, you know, this is obviously a serious issue we've been dealing with, as you know, most of you have realized. You know, there's folks that are losing their jobs or getting laid off right now, and you know, if we, you know, it's probably going to get worse here over the next month and a half, 2 months before it gets better. you know, one of the things, I'm working with administration right now to put a letter to the editor out to the, it's a letter addressed to the residents of the city of Kenai that'll encompass some of the things that we're doing. And then also obviously the recommendations that we can give to get through this quicker and lessen our chance of overloading our healthcare facility. We've got limited resources here on the peninsula, just like everywhere else. And we all need to do what we can to reduce the risk of making a surge on those resources. When you look and see what's happening in places like New York, Louisiana, Michigan, all these hotspots, you know, clearly, you know, we need to get ahead of it. We're in as of right now, in our community and on the peninsula, you know, we say we're not doing bad. Obviously, 0 cases or 0 positives would be better than where we are now. But clearly, now is the time over the next 2 or 3 weeks where we certainly need to pay attention and practice, abide by, you know, practice the recommendations of the CDC and abide by the mandates of the governor. You know, if things start to get worse, obviously, Paul and I will revisit reaching out to the other cities with our recommendations of what we would like to see the governor do on a statewide basis. But you know, the best we can do now is kind of get. And the only way I think for the frustrating part for a lot of people is they're fighting something they can't see. You know, well, I think at some point you just sort of got to get sort of ticked off at the situation we're in, and when you get ticked off, that leads to action, and the action is that you do things, recommendations that are to beat this thing. So, you know, I've been, you know, even at where I'm on my day job, we put in very active or proactive, aggressive, you know, mitigation, separation, a lot of like, you know, Paul's instituted here. We've even gone so far as to issue everybody their own individual bottle of bleach solution, refilled every day, spraying trucks before and after use, common surfaces, all those things. So I guess my point is that wherever and wherever you can to, you know, put the word out to keep that message going to our citizens that this is the way we're going to beat it. You know, we're not going to beat it by ignoring and acting like it's not happening. You know, so with that, I'll end there and then move to administration reports. City Manager, Mr. Ostrander. Oh, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Malloy.
Yeah, just have a question, and I appreciate your comments, but for the employee evaluations, you know, earlier before we went to Zoom, we were talking about doing it at City Hall with social distancing. Will we be doing it by Zoom, and will there be like a separate invitation so it's not on YouTube?
Yes, thank you. The way I understand it, speaking with Ms. Hines before this meeting, is that yes, it will be on Zoom. You correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Hines, but I certainly hope that we're not going to be broadcasting that out on something that should be an executive session out on YouTube. Ms. Hines?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. We will end the live stream for the city manager's evaluation, and then it may be possible that we'll call back into another Zoom. We do have the capabilities of requiring a password, and so then you would have to enter another password besides the 9-digit number that we entered today, to ensure that only the ones invited to the meeting are participating. And then the same thing for the special meeting the following day. It'll be another number and another password.
Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, so it's going to be obviously a little bit different, but if everybody would show up prepared for that, I think we could get through it pretty quickly. So, Councilmember Navarre, did you go ahead?
Yes, if I could, I guess it could have got brought up in our discussion, but since you raised the issue that you and Paul will be discussing different things, one thing I would like for the city, one of the anxiety things about this, and it doesn't have to, I'd like it to happen now, and I know they're starting to get some tests and some of the 5-minute tests and different things, if they come online, as we get through this, people are still going to want to know, where they sit. So hopefully that's being relayed to the governor on behalf of the city of Kenai. And that's where I said it takes a stronger voice if the whole peninsula is making the request that when there are tests available, our citizens have an ability to be able to take them. I think that's something they want to hear or find out about. And maybe too, on our website, there's questions that our residents can ask and we can get back to them. It'll also give us a kind of where some of the questions are coming from our citizens, not that they're not the same from the state level. But I don't know if you have any comment, but I just wanted that if you do have those discussions or considering, I think people do want to have the ability, and I think it does help address some of their anxiety and concerns.
Yeah, and on that note, I know right now the tests are limited. Obviously, as you said, I think there's tests that will be producing, I think I heard around 50,000 per day for these quick turnaround tests that apparently results are available within 15 minutes. But when you look at the sheer scope of what's happening in the continental United States, 50,000, hopefully they'll disperse those, appropriately around the country, meaning, Alaska, even though we've got relatively few cases compared to other states, that we would get a few of those. But what I understand right now is that you cannot get tested unless you have a referral from a doctor, and because of the shortages of tests. So as we move forward and more manufacturing is done and distributed, obviously that may change to where folks would be able to get their test and results more quickly. As it is right now, even the results are taking 4, 5, 6 days to get back, which with this type of virus, really doesn't help the situation. So because when someone takes the test, if they don't self-quarantine, I presume if you take the test, because you have a reason to take the test. Either you're not feeling good, or maybe you're exposed to somebody who has the virus, or maybe you travel to a hotspot. But the fact of the matter is that if you have a reason to test and you do take a test, I think that it would be appropriate that you self-quarantine until you get your test results back. It doesn't make any sense to me to have a suspicion that you're going to be positive and then take the test and, go about normal activities and routines. And then if it comes back positive, now you've got to retrace 4 or 5 days of activities. It's just irresponsible. So I know everybody has anxiety over that right now, but as it stands right now, as I understand it, they're not going to test unless you have you have to check certain boxes on the checklist before you can get a test. So.
Okay.
But certainly, to speak to your point, Navarre, that yes, as we move forward and more of these tests come out, that it would be appropriate to test people even if they don't have symptoms, for sure. With that, I'll move to Administration reports, Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Really, only three things I was going to talk about tonight. One was an update on COVID-19. The second was an update on the budget, and we covered both of those. The third one is bluff erosion. I did finally reach out to Murkowski's office on Monday of this week. Felt like maybe they were getting through all the work that they were in response to COVID-19, but I have not heard back yet. So as far as I know on the bluff erosion, we've still got the document sitting with the Corps, and it needs to be moved to the Congress. I'm guessing most normal legislation and normal processes have ground to a halt in DC over the last couple of weeks. And that's all I have, unless there's further questions from council.
Well, I'd like to commend our city clerk for practicing good hygiene by sneezing or coughing into her elbow. Is there any, I do have a question, Mr. Ostrander, on how do we normally handle on the North Beach during DebNet season where we've got checkpoint, we got pay stations set up, and we do have some beach sites that are on the north side of the river with folks transiting through the DipNet fishery and obviously up South Spruce Street to exit the fishery or enter the fishery. How are they treated as far as, are they given passes and waved through things of that nature so they're not impacted, or their impact is somewhat?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. And Terry can probably expand on this beyond what I can, but we do provide, we put wrap down there to allow for better access down onto the beach for those folks. And then we've included barriers there to keep a path open. I know several years ago there were issues with conflicts with the PU fishery folks and then the commercial fishermen coming up. We tried to alleviate that by changing the way that the barriers were placed out on the beach. And I do think that that's helped significantly. As far as the passes that they're provided, I think Terry could probably answer that better than I can.
Mr. Eubank?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As far as getting through the fee shacks, we can give them a transit pass. Generally, we're very hesitant to let anybody bypass our shacks, because what we found is when their cars are like follow the leader. When the first person bypasses the shack, everybody follows that car. So, and to combat that and make sure that we're really limiting the impact on them as far as time, we generally have 2 shacks operating on North Beach. So the wait time is really minimal. Last year it was incredibly minimal. So I think we've done everything we can to keep it orderly, but also limit the impact to those individuals. Now, if you ask them, I would say they probably, I think waiting in line for 10 seconds would be too long. I think there's some amount of angst with the fishery itself and that, but I think we're doing everything we can, and the impact I really do believe is pretty minimal for them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Eubank. Any other questions of the city manager? Seeing none, we'll move to city attorney, Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, members of council. I don't have any comments. Sorry, my screen my laptop went dead, so I'm on my main computer, which doesn't have video.
Okay, any questions of the city attorney? Seeing none, we'll move to city clerk, Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, members of council. My time has been dominated by the COVID response. And I can't think of anything else. I answered something that Henry had mentioned he was going to ask me about the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings, so I can answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions of the city clerk? Councilmember Navarre.
I just want to say, Jamie helped me make sure I got my iPad up working again, and got the meeting downloaded, and so I could be on here today. So all of you that are disappointed have Jamie to blame that I made it on here today. So, but thank you.
Well, I can say, just follow up on that, I was gonna leave a little early. I've never done Zoom before. I've never done these meetings, and Jamie had me set up, and I think it's gone pretty well overall, to be honest with you. And I just wanted to just make a point that I do appreciate all of the work that our city employees and department heads, city manager, or, our employees that, top down, it's what they've done to respond to this and still get a lot of their regular duties done. It's amazing. Councilmember Naxton?
I missed the opportunity. Go on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I had, but
Oh, go ahead if you,
no, it was a timing thing. But never mind.
the community. Okay, sorry about that.
Well, I was carrying on with the conversation we were having before you started.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I'm getting my connection says it's my connection's unstable. There it goes. Any other questions of the city clerk? Councilmember
Hello?
Glendenning.
Yes, two things. One, did you see I pushed my little raise the hand on the drop-down menu?
I see it.
Did that make it through?
Yep, I got it.
Okay, good. Yeah, just again, thanks for Jamie for loading up this program for me, and sitting here in an undisclosed location, it is a little easier to communicate with this than crayons and a roll of butcher paper. So you almost got me. You're not quite in this century yet, but I'm working on it. So anyway, thanks for your effort, Jamie.
How could you find your iPad with all that dust, Jim?
I kept it in my pickup truck.
Okay.
Any other questions of the city clerk? Seeing none, we'll move to additional public comment. I don't believe there's anybody online. So we'll move to council comments. And I'll do the Brady Bunch thing here. I guess I'll start at the bottom, go with Councilmember Petty.
Thank you. I just want to thank all the individuals over at the city who are working diligently under these extreme circumstances to make sure that the city runs smoothly under very challenging conditions, and just hope and pray and that everyone shelters at home and stays safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Navarre.
Thank you. Now that we're doing this on Zoom and everything, and it seems to be working, I guess I want to know from the clerk how we're going to get candy and water at our locations.
Ms. Hines?
That's kind of a little April Fool's joke where I wouldn't put her through that. And I too, I know this is a big change for everybody from school districts to the kids to you name it. So I look forward to just trying to help work through this, and hopefully our citizens are doing their part to, that the governor's asked them, and it'll make our community survive this as well as we possibly can. And I look forward to that. Now that I have Zoom on this, I might have to tie the 9-year-old school class on this, if that's okay. I think you can use this computer to tie in a school, can't you? But to let the kids see each other. But anyway, again, just thanks to everybody. And the only person I didn't see was Glenise tonight. So I don't know why her video didn't show up on mine, or maybe she's just not there. But but everybody else looks good, even for April Fool's Day. So Jim dressed up for it. I put my headphones on. So have a good night and stay safe and healthy, everyone.
Thank you. Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I was pleased to see that we have 2 bids for our dock in the harbor. It's been a long time means of generating commercial activity within our town and for the fishing industry. And it is definitely a cash flow source for the town. And then just on a personal note, I was looking at a place to invest in the stock market, and of course Zoom is way off the chart now. So what I thought was maybe my second best selection could be, since we're on Zoom and we have our photos out here, I would just go to Clairol, and then perhaps that could take care of my roots. But anyway, that ends my humor. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Councilmember next then.
There is quite a glare there, Jim. You're
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I thought he was kidding. Well, yeah, I'd like to thank the administration and all the employees too, and for all the work that they're doing. It's a pretty tough time for everybody, and I know that business is going on even though it's not as usual. And of course, we work pretty closely with the clerk, and Jamie helped me get this set up here the other day. She had a test meeting, and that worked great. And what is even more amazing is that, here's Jim using his technology that's been made available to him. So no more paper then, I suppose, since it works. You've already talked, Jim.
Don't get your heads up. Don't get your hopes up there, Henry.
Okay, well, I still think it's amazing, but that will have something to draw on, when there's ever a question that's not.
Well, I'm just climbing the ladder of successful technology adaptation.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
you made it. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, we're having fun with Jim. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that you made the over/under in Vegas, Jim. By actually getting connected.
Okay.
Oh yeah, no. This is old hat. We used to have Blackberries that would send messages across the table. So we just got to dust off a few skill sets. It'll be okay, guys. Don't worry.
Yeah, things will be okay. I mean, we got a ways to go here. They got some projections and whatnot, and it's just how I get through things personally, and kind of knowing where the peak and the end kind of date might be and all of that, and just listen to who you believe are the experts, some of the doctors and whatnot, and don't pay too much attention to the media generally overall, and Facebook and all that. I think that'll probably take you down a path to make the difficult time even worse. So go ahead, Brian.
That's a very, very good point, Councilmember Naxted. And when I was trying to throw out there too, make sure that you deal with good information, because there's nothing worse than bad information at times like this. Vice Chair Malloy.
Well, first I had to unmute it. So, yeah. Hey, I also want to thank the city clerk for the test run. Worked pretty good. And the critical incident management team. And one thing that I could do to support them was take a step back and pause. So those two discussion items that, I had last meeting, neither of them are time sensitive. So they won't be on the next agenda either. And Councilmember Navarro was correct. The item relating to, another form for the financial disclosure statement. Well, I went ahead and did ours and submitted it without any incorporation or anything like that. It's just something that we can take up at any time later. The Parks and Rec Commission, they do have a student rep, so that's a discussion that we can take up later as our our manager and his team continues to manage the emergency. Definitely continue to have confidence in what they're doing and want the public to know that too. And also have enjoyed doing the meeting with everybody virtually. And I want all of you again to stay healthy and safe where you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Peterkin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I, again, I'd like to thank Jamie as well. Last meeting, I was, I could see everyone's name, but I only saw my face. So this is a lot better looking at everybody and seeing what you're doing and being present. I just like to say the storm will pass, just like Henry said, and hopefully sooner than later. And Paul and all staff is doing a great job. I think we do need to be thinking about how to take care of our city employees. And if we dip into our reserve fund, that's what it's there for. So, we'll make it up in the future. So we just got to get through this time and hopefully it passes sooner than later. But thank you, everybody. Has enjoyed just to see all of you. And I think everybody contributed and this was a good, successful meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. And with that, seeing no other business before this body, we are adjourned.